Hi there, this is Joel C. High, Guild of Music Supervisors President. And I am super happy to welcome you all to this panel today, right before our awards. This is something that's really special and near and dear to me, a subject. This is the panel about the nominees for our outstanding games for a music supervisor panel. These are the nominees, minus Yvonne, who could not make it. But these guys are the best and brightest of what I feel is the cutting edge of the craft of music supervision. More people will have their eyes and ears on one of these people's games than will see any of the other movies or television shows that you can think of. This is the one where it is making the rules and breaking the rules and creating all new kind of paradigms for how music supervision and music works in storytelling. So I'm super glad to have you all here. You guys are in for quite a treat. Little housekeeping. I want to remind you that our annual awards, our 12th annual awards, are on Sunday, the 20th of this month. So you have up until, I think, the 14th to get pre-sale tickets, and the price, I think, goes up from there. Somebody's going to put a little link so you can see that. And it also is a lot cheaper if you are an actual member or friend of the Guild. So join. This is a great community. We're the core of the sync world, so be a part of it. Anything else I need to talk about? You know, again, we're a nonprofit, all volunteer-led organization, and we only get through this by the participation of you all. And we're really happy to have you here and excited for the Guild Awards coming up, honoring actually this year. Mitchell Lieb is our Legacy Award recipient, and the great Diane Warren is our icon this year. So please tune in, check it out, lots of surprises. And with that, I'd like to hand off with Guild of Music Supervisors founding member and newly retired board member, Jonathan McHugh, to handle this. He is the host with the most and is going to take it all from here. So thank you very much. Handing off to you, John.
Thank you, Joel. And obviously, it is a pleasure to be here again. Joel and I were joking that we started this panel series off in April when the pandemic kicked in, and we did a number of them, and we've reached a lot of people, and it's been great. It's also great to go out now and see people in real life, but it's nice to be back here. So obviously, as Joel said, video games have just been astounding with the growth of them and how some of the people on this panel and others have really helped elevate the game of music supervision and creating music for it. Today, we're going to have 4 out of 5 nominated panelists. Grand Theft Auto from Rockstar Games will not be here today, but they would be the 5th nominee. So I'm just going to start by going around and introducing our panelists to start. My old friend Steve Schnur, we worked together at Elektra Records back in the day. And Steve, for the last 20 plus years, I believe, has been at EA, a worldwide executive and president there. He's done many different things, but as he and I spoke about earlier, he's really made sure that as a music supervisor, the work with composers is done. It's a large part of what music supervisors do, but not maybe as large as most people know. And Steve, being a guy who's giving jobs to people, you know, early on, to Michael Giacchino and Mark Mothersbaugh, Junkie XL, and guys like that who hadn't done big films yet, and they started out in video games, and then they became some of the biggest film composers possibly of all time. But obviously continuing to break the boundaries of finding great composers to work on his films. And he's done such stuff as Battlefield, Sims, Madden, NFL, Mass Effect, Dragon Age, Medal of Honor, Star Wars, which he's about to go to London to go do that. And obviously the score for this game, Battlefield 2042, which he's going to get into, by getting Hildur, who won the Oscar for Joker, and her partner Sam Slater to do the score, is a phenomenal job, and we'll talk about that next. So welcome aboard, Steve, and I'll keep rolling down the line.
Thank you, Julian.
Eduardo Valesmon, Far Cry 6 from Ubisoft. Eduardo is an Argentinian-Canadian audio professional, 30 years of experience, and the last 3 years he's been at the helm of the Far Cry 6. He started his career in the film industry, where his credits have over 60 different films in 6 different countries. His audio expertise encompasses roles from dialogue editor to re-recording mixer. 2010, Eduardo made the leap to the game industry, joining the team at Ubisoft in Toronto. Since then, he has shipped AA titles, including Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell Blacklist, Far Cry 4, Far Cry Part Far Cry Primal 5 and Far Cry 5, which we'll talk about, Far Cry 6, which was supervised by Eduardo, Simon Landry, and Greg Newby. So welcome aboard, Eduardo.
Thank you very much for having me.
Cybele Pettus, another one I go back with. How long you been at EA now, Cybele?
Oh, yeah, 20 years.
Oh my God, that's right. Her and Sir, they go back, those two. What an amazing thing that you guys have been able to keep a team together for so long with Rafi. It's really great to see that obviously the leadership at EA understands how important it is to have an amazing team like you guys. So Cybele's been just incredibly busy for many years. The curation of many soundtracks, including FIFA, which is hailed by Forbes as likely the most diverse soundtrack in the history of sports games and possibly gaming in general. America's #1 annual destination in new music discovery, Madden NFL. God rest his soul, John Madden. Other things she's worked on include The Sims, Need for Speed, NFL Hockey, UFC. Prior to that, Cybele was in the A&R world at Reprise Records. And she's still an A&R gal today, putting all these great songs in. Some of the things in this game we'll talk about for FIFA, including Swedish House Mafia, Polo and Pan, Glass Animals, Little Sims, and Girl in Red. Love to hear that in there. So the sound of the Volta football soundtrack is found under the buzzing streetlights in neighborhoods from Lagos to Sao Paulo and Los Angeles and Rome. Its gritty underground vibe can be felt in the scuttling trainers on the packed dirt or hot concrete playground. Wow, who wrote that? That's fantastic. Anyway, Cybele, welcome aboard.
Thank you so much for having me, everybody, today.
All right, last but certainly not least, Ben Sumner, Life is Strange, True Colors. Founder of the music consultancy Feel for Music. Ben is a music supervisor specializing in the field of video games. Twice voted Music Week Music Supervisor of the Year. I didn't even know they had that category. That's a good one. For video games.
Don't anymore.
And winner of the number of awards for music creation and supervision across gaming, advertising, and radio. He's worked on music for numerous game franchises, including Assassin's Creed, Just Cause, Tomb Raider, Hitman, Far Cry, Final Fantasy, Life is Strange, just to name a few. So we'll get more into talking about Life is Strange next, but obviously some of the amazing music in there. Angus and Julie Stone, Kings of Leon, Radiohead, All J, to discovery artists such as Coda and Researcher. So anyway, Ben, a lot to talk about here because this is a fantastic one. So welcome aboard.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great to be amongst this celebrity panel.
It is an esteemed group, my friend. So I want to start with Eduardo. Talk a little bit about, because you've done some different stuff and you come from the audio side and moving from audio engineering to music supervision. Talk about it, if you wouldn't mind, that transition of what that's like and how your view of music supervision now that you've seen a lot of different things in the industry that you've been in.
I started professionally in audio in 1992, working in film, cutting with tape and all the stuff all the guys did back in the days. And I work in film for 20 years. I decided, okay, I'm a gamer, now immigrated to Canada. I need to do something different with my life. Let's go with games. And I found my place I feel I belong into games and involved in the whole process. Ubisoft, Toronto risk again the reputation with me and hired me. So I started as a sound designer, then as a lead sound designer, as a team lead in Far Cry 4, then Primal 5, and then they gave me the chance to lead the game in Far Cry 6. The main difference I find is in film, you have a really precise stages in production. You have pre-production, you have shooting, you have post-production. And in video games, you can have a conception and early prototypes, but in reality, it's all production. So, and the only way to achieve a good game is through multiple iterations. Multiple iterations means that you provide a vision, but then you adapt your vision as the game evolves. So that is the main thing I found. With films, you have the script. You cannot stray so far from the script. Even if the script is written again during the shooting, is written again during the editing, but there's some moment that things stop and allows more. You have a more steady target, and with games, you're into something, and a game designer came, hey, Eduardo, there's this new feature. Now you can fly and throw rockets from there, and it's scripted in this bombastic mission, and we need music for that. I say, oh, yes. Oh, yeah, I can do that. And then you try to figure out how to do it. I think that's the adrenaline and the fun side of the industry.
So let's talk about Far Cry for a second. So this is a franchise that you've been with for a number of years now. Like, how many years have you been working on Far Cries? Not just Far Cry 6, but Far Cries.
Yeah, after I finished Splinter Cell Blacklist, my first game here, I decided to move into the Far Cry franchise. For those that are not gamers or are just arriving, a Far Cry franchise is are games that are open world, action adventure, first person shooters. They have a strong narrative that drives the major narrative arc, and every game happens into a different set, an imaginary country that is very related or similar to something else, but is not the real thing. Like Kirat is not Nepal, and Yara is not Cuba, and even Hope County is not really Montana, but close enough. And what I found is the music in these games is a fundamental part of the world building experience. You build the world through music. You get to immerse the player into the world to make it believable and consistent through music. Everything needs to find its way, even what we call the extra diegetic music, the music that follow gameplay mechanic or features, needs to be related in certain way, have tie connections with the world the player inhabits. We build worlds for players to live for 50, 60 hours. Is the equivalent of 6 seasons of a TV show. It is way longer than a movie. You cannot have a movie mindset when you work in big AAA games like this. You need to have, I need a Game of Thrones season 1 to 6, with narrative arcs, multiple narrative arcs, stories that start and end, and the music need to be the cohesive element that keeps the player, tied to that all the time. And Far Cry is great on creating worlds.
So how many years did you actually worked on all the Far Cries?
Sorry?
How many years did you actually work on all the Far Cries?
8.
8 years, amazing.
Yes.
All right, so now we're at Far Cry 6. And was that Giancarlo Esposito? Is that who that was as a character?
Yeah,
So
Anton Castillo.
And he's an amazing actor. He's been in a ton of movies, TV shows. It's fantastic. But the realism that video games have now become for guys who weren't gamers and didn't grow up in the field, it's amazing just where it's come from. And so obviously, you're using great storylines now. The writing is amazing. The characters are amazing. The visuals are amazing. And of course, the music has to live up to that. So talk about a little bit about the music of Far Cry 6. As a matter of fact, before we do that, why don't we show a clip? Why don't you set up what we're going to see, Levi? If you could set up that clip for Far Cry for us. Tell us about what we're going to see here.
Well, in the clip, we are going to listen Pedro Bronfman, our lead composer, and because his voice is necessary in this panel. He will talk about the source of inspiration and how was his experience working in a game. Something I really like, and I think it's also a staple in Far Cry, is bringing many times composers that are not coming from games. They are coming from linear traditional media. In this case, Pedro Bronfman, probably most of you know him because of the first 3 seasons of Narcos, the Netflix series, and RoboCop, many others, but I think Narcos was the thing that everybody knows here.
So question for you, Eduardo, final before we go over, keep moving, but why did you guys decide to hire Pedro? What was it that his musicality, obviously Narcos is one of my favorite shows, so I love his music, but what was it for you guys that said he was the right guy for this game?
Well, during the pitch process and the feeling the instruments he uses in sometimes not a conventional way, like ronroco, charango, and South American instruments, and at the same time complemented with electronic textures or distorted guitars, we thought it would be a great musical component, because we are bringing something to keep you inside the world, but at the same time we don't leave the stealth or the anxiety of infiltrating military outpost or being in a big combat with tanks and planes and everything. And it was a amazing process to work with Pedro. I think was a mutual discovery all the time. Super enjoyable.
That's great. All right, we'll come back to you next. Steve, I want to talk to you now a little bit about Battlefield, and also what we spoke about, music supervisors working with composers. Obviously, what you guys all do is so important to be able to translate the information to your creative team and work with the composers to get the best out of them. And some supervisors do it better than others. They've had more experience. Some are more song focused, more clearance focused. Supervision is a large tent with a lot of different pillars in it. And this one, obviously, by working on, we did the panel with Gordy about Star Wars, and now we did one, talking about Gildar earlier. What for you said to you Gildar was the right person for Battlefield, and talk about the process of working through the pandemic with her and Sam?
Yeah, well, hi, everyone. I think the definition of music supervisor has changed dramatically over the last 10, 20, 30 years. I think the definition of what music supervisors think of themselves at times is unfortunately limited. And as Eduardo alluded to before, it's not about having good taste and knowing who to send license requests out to. It's about sitting with a director, a creative director, a producer, and understanding the tone from the very beginning in pre-production, sometimes before a project's even greenlit. What is the tone like? What are we trying to get for the player? What's the emotional response? And how do we get there? And then when you decide on a composer, and I'll get to Hilda in a second, I think it's critically important for the music supervisor. Me, in the case of Battlefield, there was a core team, the audio director, myself, and Hilda and Sam. And it was as if, you're making a record with a band, and we were in the room together every single day, talking about structure, talking about orchestration, talking about what we're trying to achieve, talking about how Eduardo mentioned before, the options of what we're trying to achieve. What are the options for the player on the couch? And with Battlefield 2042, I had worked on, just like Eduardo worked on Far Cry's, I like that. I worked on Battlefields. And the one thing that I felt, Battlefield is not a pro-war game. It is a game about war. And you're not supposed to feel good about the war. You have the option to feel horrible about the war. And it's much different from other war games in that regard. I figured if there was a world, which, sorry to be, a bit dramatic, but to a degree it's coming, climate change is disrupting this entire planet. And if it keeps going, there is going to be refugees and people, all around the world. The world is going to be upside down. and war could ensue, and now when I heard about it was about the two superpowers left, Russia and the US, and it even sort of shakes me now considering what's going on in the Ukraine. So to me, war wasn't necessarily just about, I just won the battle, bring in the timpani, blow the horns, victory, like so many movies have done along the way. It was about the horror, if I was thrust into a battle and I, God forbid, killed somebody or won a battle, I don't know if I walk away jumping up and down saying this was the greatest thing that I ever had. I'm going to feel victory and survival at the same time, but, horror at the same time. Hildur and Sam, I was a mega fan from Chernobyl, from the project she had done independently, Joker, obviously. I did not know Hildur. Hildur, and everybody here will tell you, when you spend 2.5 years with somebody 6 days a week, we're the best of friends now. Just like it sounds like Eduardo with Pedro, The last trip I made before the world shut down in the pandemic was to Berlin. Hildur, who won the Golden Globe, I was pretty confident she was going to win the Academy Award. And I had 1 hour at Soho House in Berlin to convince her why her next project after an Oscar would be to do a game. And I walked away from that hour pretty excited that they got it. And the key direction was disruption, musical disruption, emotional disruption. I wanted composers and players to hear it and go, I don't know what this is. I'm so unbalanced internally. I feel so, off kilter here. Because when you're on the couch and you're making a decision of what to do and you have impact on the media as opposed to a linear piece of media, the music should help you drive it. It should help you feel it, not just hear it, but feel it. And I told the one direction that I told initially to Hildur before we started going at it note by note was, I love what you did for Chernobyl. I love what you did for Joker. I love what you did for, blah, blah, blah. But I don't want any of that. I'm not here to do cut and paste of what you've done. I know you have the ability to work with me to create something that's never been done before. There wasn't one we did not go into an Abbey Road or to record orchestras. It was instruments we created. It was sound design. I wanted the player to not really being able to understand the difference between the sound design and the instrumentation. When you shot bullets from the helicopter, it became a percussive instrument. Or are they bullets? I wanted you to feel like the sound of the environment was immersed, that you were there. Because if you're in a movie, you're in a seat in a movie theater. If you're in a game, the music itself has to be your environment, your physical environment. It's not necessarily underscore. It's disruption. So I hope that answers the question.
I think she did that job. Tell us a little about the clip we're going to show right now.
This is a clip. We should go, this is a 4-minute clip, so we should go about a minute and a half maybe. But they talk about the process. But it starts with just some of the music against picture. It's interesting because it's linear. It's a linear piece as opposed to an interactive piece. But gives you an idea, hopefully, as to what the direction was and why would the person that won the Oscar want to do something like this. I guarantee you she was offered every massive film at every astronomical price imaginable, but she wanted to do this. She wanted to understand she wanted to musically create the distressful feelings of what climate change could do to this world.
Man, I love the aspect of creation. It's when you really think about what we do and we get to do things like this for a living, they pay you to hang out with people playing that music and creating these incredible sounds. It's great.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, John, for those that know me, Cybele knows me well, there's not a day that goes by that I'm not so grateful, for being able to do this.
You've had a good run, my young friend. So speaking of Cybele, I want to jump the script to talk about a game that's heavy on a really different flavor of international source music. Soccer being the number one sport in the world, football as mostly called elsewhere. Cybele, this franchise has been just unbelievable for you and the company to be able to just go fucking take those A&R chops that you got at Reprise Records 20 years ago and build them on an international scale from the brand newest Girl in Red to the classics. Talk about the process and how you work with the game developers to decide the exact sound and the approval process for how you pitch music to them.
So I think, we as a music team just not decided, but saw very early on the power that this game has and the reach this game has to really help break small artists to the world. And so that has been, our MO from the very, very beginning. And I'm incredibly fortunate. My FIFA team, which is, 2 people that I work with on the music selection. And if you, understand and see the list that's in the menus for the most part, like there's no quantifiable metrics to show them. There's no numbers to show them. Like most of the music, when we're looking at it with the team, is unreleased. Obviously artists like Jungle and Swedish House Mafia are more recognizable, but largely the soundtrack consists of brand new music by artists that people generally don't know. So they make my job amazing, and I'm never going to say easy because this, game is a beast. So I think it's just one of those labors of love. And then since we launched Volta, which is a very different, way of programming music than the main menus that we've been doing all along, part of the same game, but Volta represents a very gritty street ball. And so we're able to, instead of having this, a much more kind of, I wouldn't say soothing, but, more kind of internationally, whatever the word would be. But when you go into Volta, then we look at hip hop, we look at grime, we look at hard electronic, and, you're able to sort of showcase 2 very different types of styles of music that still resonate with the players. So like I said, yeah, it's really, I owe a lot to my team for giving me the trust of, just if I say, trust me on this one, they'll trust me. And so much of it comes from our guts, and, because again, same thing, I have no quantifiable evidence of, kind of how big or how small or what's going to happen with an artist that we put in the game, but we want to take risks. Like we want to be able to expose these guys to our enormous platform.
And I just want to make sure I'm clear. Do you have to be a brand new song to be in this game?
Do I have to be a what?
Brand new song. You said new music. Is it all
in the main menu area? Yes. We're pretty like sticky about that, but that's the beauty of Volta is no. So we've gone back to like historic, kind of classic garage remixes from the UK, you know what I mean? As sort of like a little nod. So, that's another way to differentiate between the new modes. But what we've always wanted to try to avoid with the main, soundtrack menu is having songs on the soundtrack that the players are like, I heard this on BBC or I heard this on the radio 6 months ago. Like we have to get so far ahead. And I have to also give our, licensing and music and managers and artists a lot of credit for having that kind of trust to let us listen to demos and rough mixes, you know what I mean? And they are very, very well aware of the power of this game and the reach that it has. So I really want to kind of do the best that I can to make sure that everything in the menus is something that people are almost hearing for the first time. And a lot of it was, like, for example, Blood Moon, which was one of my, secret favorites on the soundtrack, literally just was released. So we had this sort of, FIFA exclusive sneak peek with this artist who I think is incredible. And they're willing to do that because they know it's a launching time.
And what's the time frame? Because these games take forever to get done. Will you may contact an artist and say, hey, yes, you have a brand new track, but we're not going to ask you, we're asking you not to release it for 6 months, a year. What's the windows?
Yeah, so I mean, generally speaking, like once we ship the game, I think we take a collective deep breath for about 2 weeks and then start all over again. So I really don't like to dictate to a label or to an artist, like you have to put this out at this time. You know what I mean? That's really up to them. And so, I think it ends up, they are very, very open and very willing to time up with us because they know it's going to help them in the long run. So it's a very, very long process. Last year, I believe the total count between Volta and Menus was 122 songs.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a music-intensive game right there.
It is indeed. It is indeed. But as I said, it is such a labor of love for everybody on our music team. I just love it. And again, the fact that we're given the freedom to really experiment, like we've put these really, kind of cool, weird jazz bands in there. Like we have that freedom to do whatever we think is cool, So that's something really rare and really special.
It's great. All right, we're moving around. Ben Sumner, Life is Strange, True Colors. Ben, I guess I have to ask, any relation to Gordon Sumner? Isn't that the same spelling?
You wouldn't believe how much I get that, but no, not at all. Nor Bernard as well.
Okay. Anyway, so I thought it was an interesting choice that you did a 15-track score from Angus and Julie Stone. Tell me how that process started and why did you guys come to them to be able to deliver that for you?
Well, I think it's one of the things we've been trying to sort of, I guess, like hybridize the boundaries between commercial music licensing and score a little bit. And it's the kind of second time we did it. We did it in the previous game with a band called Daughter. But Angus and Julia Stone, we'd licensed, because I've worked on the whole Life is Strange franchise, so they're now on the fourth game. But yeah, in the first game, we licensed a track by Angus and Julia Stone called Santa Monica Dream. Beautiful track, and that really seemed to hit with our audience. Like it was a sort of big moment in the first game, so they've kind of been on our radar for a while. The game's sort of, the very first game was basically a kind of indie surprise hit, if you like, and it's grown to where it is now. It's reasonably, I'm not sure if it'd be called a AAA, but there's a reasonable scale to it. It's a full price game and all that kind of thing. So that's enabled us to work with bigger artists as we go along. Angus and Julia Stone, they make beautiful music. We spoke to a number of different artists about the project, but they just felt like the best fit. Also, part of the narrative in the game is the key character and her relationship with her brother. Obviously, they're a brother and sister partnership as a band.
Okay, so that was part of it right there.
Yeah. I mean, it's not necessarily the key thing. We weren't only looking for brother and sister bands, but it's definitely something. I mean, I think it's always about great fit. When you're trying to work with an artist, especially in a significant way like we are here with Score, the better the fit, the greater it will be for the sum of its parts. You know what I mean? Like, I think it was similar with, we had some original music from MXM Toon as well. And she's a big fan of the game. She's a TikTok and Twitch star kind of thing as well. And she'd done playthroughs of previous games just as a fan, if you like. So sort of bringing her into the world and having her as the singing voice of the main character was another kind of cool connection. It's a great fit. And she was able to do really interesting and genuine, heartfelt content around the game because she was as excited as anyone, really,
And you mentioned TikTok. So obviously with TikTok just passing over 1 billion unique users right before the holiday, is there any kind of where you get any musical tips from them? Or on the other side, do you put stuff out there to lay it out there for people because it is such a big influencer of eyeballs and music in the world today?
I mean, I'll be honest, TikTok's not so, I mean, obviously I'm very aware of TikTok, but it's not something that's been hugely on my radar. It's sort of it's not had loads of conversations about TikTok, but I mean, unlike some of these guys, we deal with both marketing side and in-game side, because we're an external supervision company. So we kind of do a bit of both, not on every game. Like with Far Cry, for instance, we did one of the trailers. We did a remix for Far Cry 6, but me and Eduardo have never met until today. So,
build the music supervisors, man, putting the world together one at a time. So, Ben, you're going to show us a clip. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, this was the trailer for one of the main trailers for the game. The first track that features on it is another custom exclusive track that was made for the game by an artist called Novo Amor. It's also the kind of menu track for the game. he's a really interesting guy. We had a great conversation when we were talking about the game and potentially him working on it, and he really got the narrative. And this kind of, it sounds very strange because he's from a small town in Wales, and this is kind of set in a small town in, I guess, like a fictional Colorado type place. But he had this real connection between the mentality of that kind of small town, the community spirit, and where he came from. And he wrote this track specifically about the town.
Yeah, Ben, it just amazes me obviously the quality of the work and the music. It's a trailer for a movie, it's a TV show, it's all of the above. But as we talked about earlier, more people see video games than any of the other mediums that we work in. So it's pretty fantastic. So for that one, was that always the song that was queued up, or how did that one end up there?
With the trailer, or you mean for the beginning of the game?
Yeah, that's the song for the trailer there.
Yeah, well, so there's a 2Q trailer that, but no, I mean, like the song wasn't made for the game, it was originally made for the game, but I mean, it's kind of part of the back end, if you like, is often when we're negotiating use in the game, we're also negotiating use for the trailers. So we have this kind of roster of commercial music that we're able to use, and that, so to some degree, we're able to see out of what we've got already what's going to best fit the trailer. So we kind of, it's kind of a chicken and egg process, if you like, with that trailer. We had the track and we knew we wanted to use it, and that was given to the trailer agency in advance. The second track on that was then added on later as a kind of, because we needed to change the mood for that trailer and make it a bit more exciting in the second half, because obviously that first one's very emotive and sets the tone, and that's very much more the majority of the in-game tone that we tried to get across, is that kind of more sensitive, emotive indie sound that I guess the franchise is synonymous with.
I mean, when I was watching, I was thinking Twin Peaks, like, where's David Lynch? He's going to pop out. You know what I mean? It's definitely got that element to the whole thing. So thank you, Ben, for sharing that. So, I mean, there's obviously, Lou, we could talk for hours. We only have about 13 more minutes. And I think we would be tone deaf to not talk about it. Again, video games are one of the greatest escapes of all time from the world. And people literally, I remember having to pry my son away from playing games, and like it's an addictive form of escape. But obviously what's going on today in Russia, I thought was very interesting. And Steve and I spoke about it briefly, that what's happening today, and listen to NPR, McDonald's shutting down and Starbucks shutting down in Russia is absolutely unprecedented. And obviously the bigger, to take away people's McDonald's and Starbucks is right up there with taking away their video games. So Steve, you can just jump in first and talk about it, because obviously I just read an article about companies literally stopping their sales in Russia, which is it's just unprecedented.
Yeah. And we're one of them. We're one of them. Yes. That I'm very proud.
So you can just talk about that, and also mention what you mentioned to me, because I thought that's incredible.
Yeah, and I didn't know whether to talk about it now, but there's a person in our community. I've just recently become friends with him. He was a social media friend up until recently. His name is Vladimir Savin. He is the head of audio at, what's the name of the studio? My apologies. It'll come to me in a second here. Here it is, at Gunzilla Games. And he's in the Ukraine studio. I called him the other day, and it was the most surreal experience you could ever imagine. He's a musician. He's a composer. He builds samples. He runs audio for a game company, and he's at home with his wife and 12 other people in a house defending themselves with guns right now. He had to go after 30 minutes because the sirens went off. He asked me about samples he's built and samples he's created, and even about selling those samples. All the money I helped him sell so far $1,500 worth of samples, and he said he was able to get a bus and fuel to get 22 people from the Ukraine to the Slovakia border, and pretty humbling. I can just pass that information around. I'm not going to sell it here, but I'm going to pass it around. But put
it in the chat, because if people want to help, it is so far away from here. And, the only personal effect we have is gas prices go through the roof. But the suffering, I've been avoiding watching a lot of it, and I spent hours last night going through pictures and seeing what's happening there. So I love the fact that Ubisoft is donating and EA is cutting out product, and McDonald's and Starbucks, these international brands, are trying to make a stand and starve the Russian people of some of the things that they've become accustomed to maybe get this fucking nut job to back down on what he's doing. Yeah. So it's nice that there is something. And if any of you guys just want to comment on it, because I think it's, this is a truly international panel, which is great. But it's definitely something to see that you guys are, all taking stands and doing.
I just posted it in the chat, strixinstruments.com, and you'll see 100% of the proceeds for the samples. And by the way, the samples are great. We used them in Jedi Fallen Order. I mean, they're really great, but all the proceeds are going to the Army. And when it says the Army, it doesn't mean they're handing it over to, they are the Army.
Well, and obviously people picking up rifles and just doing it themselves. It's just, you imagine what would happen if they came for your neighborhood. What would you do? Do you run or do you fight? Anyway, we're way off topic here, because this is escape and adventurism, but it's always important to talk
about. It is,
about.
But he's a part of our game music community, and he's in it. We're not, but I'm happy to support him. I'm going to keep calling him and just pray for him and his family.
It's great. So if anybody else has a thought, jump in, or I have other questions prepared. So, Steve, you and I talked a little bit briefly about the aspect of there's a lot of people out there that want to know, what do you do? Like, how do you become a composer? How do you get to the level? Not even getting there, but like recommendations. I want to go around the room for just everybody to just, to get on people's like yours radar, and yours might not be the right places because you're doing the biggest of the big games, all of you guys. But just in general, like inspire people with what they should be doing to create music for games in general. Thoughts overall. Start with Steve and roll around the room, because we got about 8 minutes left.
This is a music supervisor panel, so let me start there. If it was the SCL, I'd have a different answer for composers. There's opportunities to go out there and meet developers. The last 2 years, the world shut down, but between the GDC and other sort of ways, there's places to go out there, and smaller developers are in need of people with vision and musical intelligence. We think it's all easy, but the truth is, music can be a jungle, and there needs to be help. The only thing I would suggest is that music supervision, at least I've done film, I've done television. I can tell you that in the video game space, music supervision is a much different animal. It is it starts in a deep pre-production phase, if you heard from everyone here, and goes right up to beta and release and beyond, because there's additional content that continues after. So you never get out of it. You listen, Eduardo's going to be working on Far Cry 382 in his life at this point, we're in it deep. Cybele's been working on FIFA for 20 years, so I just think we need to understand it's not just, and I'm not discounting people who do this, it's not just, I have needle drops and I need help licensing them or selecting them. It literally, music supervision in the game space is hands-on. Every note that appears in every game, every trailer, every marketing asset, it's all music supervision. That could be a composer that can set a tone. It can be music, licensed music, whatever the case may be. What Cybele said before, I always say that FIFA is not, she's not curating playlists, she's curating culture. And so the in-depth, not just knowledge, but the in-depth love of music is so critical in our space. It's a truly deep love that we all have, everyone here, I guarantee, with music. And therefore, we understand the real estate of games and how valuable it is and how much impact we can have with the music we put in the game.
Great.
I want to jump in really, really quickly. I know you're going to go around the horn, so to speak, Jonathan, but I think when it comes to the licensed music, because, it's very, very different, obviously, as composed. But I do get artists saying, what do I need to do to, write a song to make it fit into FIFA? And at the end of the day, I don't want anybody to write a song that they think are going to fit into FIFA. And what I really love about the music that's been coming out recently, and I think a lot of that has to do with a very tumultuous, decade so far, is that it's really a heart on your sleeve. Talk about what talk about who you are. And I think that's really resonating, especially, with me for sure, but with younger generations, because people don't feel so alone. And, so I feel really strongly about the music that I've been hearing over the past few years. And I think it's just a really interesting shift to the younger generation.
Great. And, the other question just came up from the audience, and I want to try to get that. And maybe Eduardo or Ben can jump on it. The aspect of more women composers. Obviously, we know that's needed. Someone like Hilda winning an Oscar just kicks down that door. We've obviously seen that, there need more women engineers in music and more women producers in general. But talk about either of you guys have seen, or worked with any women that you can recommend out there, composers, or just in general advice for that same thing, a woman obviously trying to go into a more male-dominated business. Your thoughts?
Well, in the case of Far Cry, I think the licensed music, around 60% of the music we have more than 100 songs, and are female artists, mostly Afro-Latinas. And in the specific case of additional composer, we have Gabilonia. She's a rapper from Venezuela. She lives in Caracas. We needed to produce under kind of non-traditional circumstances. You calling your artist is not picking up and say, I was in a neighborhood when if I pull my phone, I get killed. And, and I need a visa to move to Colombia in order to record, because there are no ways. She's, it has to be, we cannot escape the reality of the world, as Stephen was saying. First, I like to mention the other two music supervisors that are my team, are not here. Simon Landry from Ubisoft Music, yes, and Greg Newby, that is also audio director. He's now in Singapore. Going back to Gabilonia, Far Cry 6 is about an authoritarian regime. It's about fascism, and I wanted an Afro-Latina that represent living under an authoritarian regime. So she wrote and composed and performed 2 songs for the game, even in cinematics. And it wasn't easy to bring her to Toronto. Visa was rejected many times. Some people can move around. Some people, because where they are from, are very difficult to move around. We finally made it with the support of the studio, and it was amazing. And when she arrived, it was March 13th, 2020, the beginning of closing the borders, and we need to compress 3 days of production into one. She did everything. We recorded 2 songs, did motion capture, made interviews, everything. She was like, okay, bring it to me. Told me some stories. You have to see the, also talking with women, Cuban Canadians, or Cuban living in the island, or Cuban in exile, because they spoke against the regime in Cuba. Now they are living in different places. And, the strength of those women is amazing.
Well, it's great that your game can give voice to Latino women, and just, what you guys all do. And, one of my favorite things about being a music supervisor is giving people's shots, trying to get people that have never had music in games or TV shows or video, whatever before, making them money, because it is very hard as a musician, as we all know, to make money. So what we do, and then also trying to train people who are artists who want to be composers but don't know how to do it, and they need people direction to be able to do that. And it was nice that the Angus and Julie Stone, who go from a Australian folk duo to doing a score for a video game, like, it just shows the personal growth of what you can do. And a lot of it is basically what the ability for us to give them those missions to go on. So Ben, why don't you close, because we're about out of time, but why don't you, last words for you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I just, obviously our game of the Life is Strange franchise, I mean, this last game, the female character is a lead character. All the lead main characters, pretty much, with the exception of one game, is a female lead. The female voice is extremely important for this game. And I think to a large degree is actually part of the reason for the success of this game, is because it's a game that's very much about a female mindset. It's much more emotionally driven. It's not action driven. It's not so much about killing. It's about real life issues. And I think it was made to appeal to a female audience with female characters. And working with the likes of Daughter and Angus and Julia Stone, and having and MXM Tune, and having female voice for the soundtrack has been hugely important. And to answer your other question, I'm not sure as I'm best placed to really advise women on how to get on in the industry. But what I can say is I think there's a huge thirst for both women composers and more women in the games industry in general. And I also think there's a huge thirst for help for music in games. As someone who's started a business that is about music for games not really that long ago, my experience is nowhere near as extensive as these guys, but I think it's a burgeoning industry with where music plays a key part of it, and there's a lot of roles within that which are there if you can get yourself in the right spot for it.
Well, yeah, I'm really bully on it, and I love keeping up on it. And I can't thank you guys enough for participating in this panel, for all your great work. And on behalf of the Guild, don't forget, on the 20th of March, Sunday, the 12th Annual Guild of Music Supervisor Awards, unfortunately virtual. But next year, for sure, we'll all get together. So hopefully you guys will fly up or for wherever you're at and come visit with us in LA. So get your tickets for that event and continue to look out for the great panels that the Guild puts out. Thank you once again for your time and for everybody showing up and visiting with us today. Have a good one.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys.
so
Best
much.
of luck. Best of luck, guys.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
congrats,
Joel.
everyone.
Thank you for everybody for coming.